All right. Happy New Year, Paul.
We're back. Happy New
We're
Year,
back.
Gregory.
Yeah, 2026.
New Year.
Welcome back. Yeah. So, welcome back to the Gregory and Paul show. I'm Gregory,
Paul.
and we break down latest in SaaS startups, AI, whatever the internet happens to be arguing or debating about. And boy, were there a lot of arguments this week. I didn't have a lot of this stuff on my bingo card. Crazy taxes coming out of California, driving
That's right.
billionaires out of the state, Somali fraud uh, all over, supposedly, allegedly, all over
Allegedly.
the country. Wow, there is so much to discuss on a calm Friday after New Year's.
New Year. That's right.
Why don't you,
How was
why
your
don't
New Year?
Yeah, tell me about tell me about your New Year's first. You're over there in
Uh,
Toronto.
yeah, it's cold. It's freezing. But we're in the process of moving our house. So that's always a painful, painful thing to
Over the holiday, moving.
over the holidays, packing, spending time with the family. We still got to enjoy our Christmas and New Year's just a little bit. Nobody got sick, which is a blessing.
So wait,
A lot of my
did
friends
you
are.
hire movers?
We're going to have to hire a mover.
So you're not done yet.
It's not done yet, so I think we'll be wrapped up in a week or so.
Dude, moving is exhausting.
It's exhausting, isn't it? You
I
you
know.
moved a couple months back, right?
Yeah, I feel like I've moved way too many times, right? We owned a bunch of houses in California. We kept moving.
Right.
And then every time I do
Yeah.
it, I'm like, never again. And then, of course, right. So we sold a house in California. We moved here. We had an apartment for only a year and a half. And then we moved out of that. Like, I've just moved a lot and like, it's tiring.
It's so tiring. And I think the next time we'll definitely not move in the winter, especially in Toronto. It's we were gonna move on a few days back. It was a huge snowstorm. I think you were in New York uh, as well. That was fun. That was not fun. Uh, and now it's weather. You have to incorporate with the
Yeah.
weather.
Hey, is there like a noise in or is there something happening? I hear like a bunch of feedback, audio feedback. Is that
Audio
you?
feedback.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's way better. Yeah.
Is this a little bit better?
Yeah, I still hear like it sounds like you're in the Arctic and the wind is whistling by you.
Oh, that's the condo.
Oh my God, really?
Unfortunately, yeah. We have in the winter we just have a whistling sound. Give me a
That's
second.
better. It was the wind whistling by you.
Well, this
Oh my
is this is
God.
just a part of the condo. It's insane. Give me a
That's
second. I'm gonna
funny.
close the door.
Okay.
Okay, how's this? Is this much
Yeah.
better? Okay.
Holy dude. What are you in an igloo there? And
Yes, that's literally part of the problem.
Oh
Is
my
there's high
God.
pressure in the condo, and in the winter you just get a constant whistling.
Crazy. Well, yeah, I got brutally sick. I flew back to New York. I thought I was like, I'm gonna have the best trip ever. I'll fly out Christmas Day and see my family and got first class and I'm watching movies and I'm just having like the best time.
Nice.
I spent like a day in New York, saw my family. It was great. I had dinner with them. I hadn't seen them in a long time. And then I woke up in the hotel room, top five most sick I've ever been. Ever been. Lied in bed, fever, just a tiny little hotel room in New York City with like no windows, like a window that just faces like an air shaft or something. And I'm on my deathbed, just lying there. I didn't eat anything or drink anything all day. Just kind of, just lucid
Just slept it off.
dreaming. Oh, got up and finally stumbled around to the drugstore to get some like Gatorade. and cold medicine, and I could barely eat like a Cliff Bar. And I sat in bed and I watched holiday movies, which was so comforting, actually. It's Christmas. I'm like watching Willy Wonka and all the classic, and I'm like, oh, this is actually so relaxing. It's just like Christmas movies. And went back to bed. So I don't know, it's like 24 hours of like sleep. And then I kind of felt better. And I saw some friends, and then I flew back, and like I'm still sick, like 7 days later. Just brutal. But I was excited to do our podcast anyway today.
I
Talk
love it.
about
Let's talk
all of these
about
crazy.
things that we missed.
Yeah, do we kick it off with like the Somalia stuff? Like that stuff is out of control. Like if you're not an X, you don't know about this. There's actually I watched the All In podcast. Where they kind of summarized it pretty succinctly. So there's been people investigating fraud in Minneapolis for a long time regarding the Somali community, and that the accusations is that, and some of these have been convictions, they found like daycares that are fake and are billing the government for daycare and collecting government money
Yeah,
to
subsidies.
subsidies to do a daycare that's not really a daycare, not operating daycare, not taking care of anybody. And so the local news has been doing this for like a long time. And then this guy, this like kid, Nick Shirley, created this video where he went and investigated a bunch of these with some other guy in the video. Have you seen this guy Dave with the video? And then they uncovered a bunch of them where like same kind of thing. Like they just don't look like great daycares. And all they did was like ask if they could have their kid in a daycare, or if they could, like, that was kind of funny. Like the investigative journalism, like he didn't really dive into the accounting or anything. He just basically was like, is this a legitimate daycare or not? Which is like
Right.
quite fascinating, because like anybody could have just showed up and like asked these questions. Like this isn't some like deep forensic accounting piece. I thought that part, I think is why people are so surprised by all of this, because like the most basic kind of
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't even
analysis.
like correct.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Wall Street fraud. It wasn't like white collar fraud. It was legitimately just empty daycares. Like right.
Well, they weren't even. It doesn't
So
even look like there was any attempt to cover it up, to like pretend that they were operating as daycares, right? Like they
correct.
don't look like any daycare anybody would want to send their kid to.
The kids, yeah.
They're not operational. Like you can't just walk in and like apply and have your kid go there,
Yeah.
right? Like which is what
And
a normal daycare would do, right? They're not even pretending to be like a real business.
so the I had an interesting conversation about this with a friend. It, he raised kind of like a good point, which is there's two sides to this story, right? One is kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the focus on the community, specifically the Somali community, and the second thing is there's a wider topic of fraud in general in society. Uh, so the point that he was trying to make was that fraud is everywhere. So he owns a company that actually solves fraud in the medical insurance
Your friend does.
industry.
Okay.
Correct. Correct. So he kind of like pulled me aside. He just said, "Look, there's two layers of the story here."
So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP.
Sorry.
No, that's cool. So the real question here is like, is this kind of like the normal situation now in America where fraud is just everywhere, and this story just came out because of the community aspect to it aspect. So people are paying attention not because of the fraud piece, because of the community piece.
I think the explanation is quite simple. I think that like fraud went to the moon during COVID.
Right.
And I think like things like the
Right.
PPP loans, like they just gave them out to people. Like, how would you even? We started to blur the lines of like what was fraud and what wasn't.
That's right.
I think COVID. I don't think there's anyone out there who disagrees with me. Like, COVID was terrible in every regard,
Right? For sure.
and then the way that we handled it was just unbelievable, right? Like, ran up the debt and the interest rates and the just the mismanagement. Like, I've never, I cannot believe, I still
Yeah,
can't believe that
I
it was
agree.
handled the way that it was
I agree.
handled. And so I think with like things like PPP loans, are there fraudulent ones? Because like
100%.
I was saying like the requirements of like what was required to get them like wasn't clear. So you could say
It
that
wasn't
like
clear.
every loan was legitimate, therefore it's all fraud, right? Like we changed the dynamics of how these things work in a way that was like very unhealthy, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it
Yeah.
made it easy to commit other types of fraud because like they weren't being investigated. There was like restrictions, all kinds of stuff. And I think it has been cleaned up since COVID. And I think that that's what happened. And the scale of the fraud is really large. And so there's a lot of people who are benefiting from it and like they don't want it to be uncovered. So there's like a lot of incentives for the fraud to continue. I hope it's not the case that we just continue to experience enormous amounts of fraud in the United States.
So it kind of like lends to the general feeling of the young people where we feel like unless you're pushing the boundaries a little bit, you're always behind. So, like in the crypto industry as well, right? Rug pulls is a form of fraud, I would say. And it just happens so often the community just kind of accepts it, accept that things like this have happened. I just wonder if I don't really have an opinion on this. I do think that this is a societal. It's a problem that we collectively have to address, and I don't really know what the solution is.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't really know what the answer is. I guess like at the highest level, I think that like people exposing fraud is good,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that
that's true.
like I was generally supportive of like Elon and Doge. Generally supportive of like whatever the work Nick Shirley
Yeah,
is doing. I'm generally supportive
yeah,
of people like going out there and trying to expose fraud. I guess like I'm very much against the argument that it's just small. It doesn't matter relative to the size of the budget or something. I think that that is a garbage argument that like fraud is bad and it should be dealt with. And the idea that like we should just accept some level of fraud, like I don't agree with that. I agree some level of fraud will exist, but I don't think
it
that,
always exists.
yeah, but I don't think we should have the attitude that it should be tolerated or that it's somehow acceptable. Like fraud is not acceptable. I think we need to be very clear about that. And maybe that's what's changed is like there seems to be a lot of people out there who perhaps believe that some level of fraud is okay.
Acceptable. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
And so
Yeah,
I think that that's really bad.
I think that's really bad. And I think in California there is the False Claim Act, which allows private companies or private individuals to file a lawsuit against any company or individuals on the behalf of U.S. government against essentially fraudsters. I think they get a cut of whatever is recovered, maybe like 15 to 20%, let's say.
Yeah, yeah,
So
some kind of whistleblower.
there's a whistleblower, correct? So I think that's probably a good first solution towards this. And then maybe it is just better accounting, better tech, better traceability of how a dollar moves through the economy. And I know we talked about blockchain in the past. Like in insurance industry, blockchain could solve a lot of problems on how a uh, piece of claim are properly filed and properly paid out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, it doesn't seem like it was hard to like investigate this fraud. I think the problem is that like fraud is there's
What
way
can you
too
do
much of
about it?
it, and
Yeah,
there's
right.
not enough enforcement, and there's not enough interest in preventing it. I think that there's like a lot. There's just like I said, COVID blurred the lines between like what's fraudulent and what's not. And I think people have lost some perspective on like what is legitimate and what's not. Like we just gave loans out to people to not work.
Yeah,
Like
it's true.
I don't think that was a good idea personally.
Right,
It's not
right.
fraud. Like the government said you could do it. People applied for it, they got the loans. But it's a very unhealthy place to be. And so I think it set this precedent that like there's just all kinds of money available for people and like what did you have to do to get a PPP loan? Like it wasn't clear, right? So I think we're in this place now where like it's the clarity on like what is fraud and what's not is the problem.
It is blurred
I think we can clean
after
it
COVID.
up, but yeah.
Right. So you just basically have to like essentially be very clear about the punishment if you're caught, right? Actually, you know, you should prosecute some people who may or may not get committed fraud during that time or continue to do so. And really, it's just about kind of like being vigilant, I guess, right? Like right now, the problem is like, who do you even report these to? Who cares? Is it the government? Is it like uh, really unclear how or who cares about these things?
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
I so do we have the update? I mean, there's some facts we could look at regarding this specifically, right? Like there was some like so in addition to like what Nick Shirley and has been happening on X recently, the FBI has been investigating this. There have been prosecutions. There have been people that have gone to jail, right? So like there has been something at work for a long time in this area. It just wasn't like a national story. It just like took off recently. Like this video that Nick Shirley made went crazy viral. Like I think he said
it totally did.
500 million views.
Million
So it really
views.
brought it all to light. I mean, what I saw with the response from the Trump administration was that they're pausing all payments to all daycares in the United States, and then they're gonna
I
ask
think it's
them
fine.
for proof and reestablish like which ones are legitimate, which ones are not, which seems like the kind of response I would expect when something like this
Yeah, I
happens. It
think it's
just says
okay.
like, let's just look into all this stuff and make sure that like money's going to like legitimate daycares. Like I think it's totally I mean, that's how I would do an audit in my own department if I ran a company, right? And we found people were
Exactly.
like defrauding the company. Like I would pause all outgoing payments and I'd say like we just need to like review everyone's paperwork and make sure everything's in order. So I think like that as a response is like completely rational. It's like what any corporation would do. So why would the government behave in a
And
similar
we just need
fashion?
to exactly, and we just need to do it at government level. I think it's. I actually think that there could be a lot of cool tech built into these things that solves the problem. I don't know
I mean,
what it
like,
looks like, but
I mean, like, I don't even, it doesn't seem like tech is the problem here, right? Like, these things are so easy um, they're so easy to find, right? Like literally, like, it's not like it's hard to determine that and if they are legitimate, like, they're not operating within the parameters I would expect, like, a daycare to operate in. Like, they're just, uh, bizarre, right?
maybe it's just yeah. I don't know what the solution here is, but it's cool that it's coming to light and people do care about this. And I do think there's lots of opportunities here for if anyone wants to work on this problem. I mean,
All
that's
right.
kind of what Dojin was, right? So,
What
should we
else do you
move
want to
on?
say? Do you have anything? Yeah, anything else you want to say about Nick Shirley or
No, I think it's cool that people like this is bringing these issues to light. We've been talking about inflation is on the show as well, and I think this is really one of the larger problems. is solving fraud.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess like I would go and say something like, look, I think the rise or the embrace, let's use the term like that, of citizen journalism is excellent. I'm all
Oh,
for
yeah,
like, um, I'm all for uh, individuality and individualism, and the idea that people can do things and start YouTube channels and investigate stuff and
yeah,
take take take
exactly.
take things into their own hands and do things. Like I'm like a really big advocate for that. I've always been since I was very small. I think the idea that like people don't feel or don't want you to feel empowered anymore is really bad. Like some of the things that Mandami said at his swearing in New York. Like I'm really against collectivism and the idea that the state is going to take responsibility for a lot of things that you should be responsible for.
Right.
And my opinion, like that's the part of collectivism which I really disagree with.
I
Uh,
see. Right.
yeah, yeah, and I think that there's a definitely group of people who are pushing for more and more government and state intervention and more things. And I like the idea that whether it's citizen journalism, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's people like going out on social media and starting newsletters and doing things like I think people should do things and should take on responsibility for no matter how small or how big. I think it's excellent. And I'm really against the idea that like people seem to be enthusiastically giving up agency and giving up responsibility to like the government.
Yeah, totally. As long as they're not fraud. They
As
can
long as
do
what?
things as long as it's not fraud. They can, they're more than welcome to do things as long as
Yeah,
on a productive, valuable uh, way of doing things.
yeah, that's of course, right? Like, yeah, I guess just to be clear, yeah, I advocate for people to do productive things and positive things and things that are constructive and are going to contribute to their community and contribute to society. Like, and that's what I think entrepreneurship in particular is about, right? People going out there and starting businesses and doing things, and I think it's fantastic and trying to take responsibility and create value and do something excellent. I think there should be much more of that. I'd love to see more people excited about that and less people excited about like relinquishing control and giving other people and bureaucracies responsibility to like do things and take care of you. Like I just think that's terrible.
Agreed.
All right.
Well, let's move on. I added this like to the document as well. So the news from the last couple of weeks was Meta acquired a company called Manus AI. I thought it was super interesting because Meta's acquisition of Manus is a
All right, let me see
AI
if I can get this
company
up.
that helps you. It's like an AI worker. They they started out with creating slides, creating fully automated slides. You can use it to create websites. It's very similar to Canva. Uh, and it's interesting because there's a, Manus was a Chinese company, but the founders moved the company to Singapore and kind of divested out of China. Tesla used to be an investor of Manus, but they did a share buyback. And they kind of fully decoupled away from China. So what's really interesting here is that like even though all of the discussion of China and US are competitors in the AI field, it seems like there are still couplings going on here. Um, it seems like the playbook for Chinese AI companies is to actually build the tech in China, then move the company to places like Singapore, and then sell to the US companies in afterwards. This is really interesting, and I actually have not predicted that this will happen. it kind of also follows the same book as Canadian tech companies, I would say. A lot of us start companies, build it initially in Canada, then move the company to the US, and acquisition-wise, tend to try to either go public or sell in the US. So
Yeah, I mean,
by
it's even
far, still
TikTok.
US is exactly, yeah. By far, US is still a huge attraction to tech companies, especially in India.
Yeah, because
So
TikTok is a Chinese company, but they have the CEO's out of Singapore. Isn't he a Singapore national?
yeah, correct. So he's
The
a Singaporean
CEO?
national.
Like he has a
Yeah,
passport from Singapore at least. I actually don't know the details in that. He's not born in China, right?
no, he's Singapore.
He's definitely born in Singapore. Yeah. And then they owned the US entity, right? So that model has been around for a long time. I mean, most like tech companies that I've been involved with that were from Asia, they almost all were headquartered in Singapore. Like even if you're an Indian company or from somewhere else in Asia, I'm trying to think even like Australian company, like not all of them, but like it's just so much more affordable and effective to do your business out of Singapore that everyone it's like the Delaware of Southeast
Yeah,
Asia,
that's right. Yeah,
right?
correct.
It's
Well,
just easy to set up a company there and manage it.
right. It's easy to set up a company, but what I'm kind of want to call out is they build a lot of the tech in China, right? Like so the problem with China right now is can they prevent all of their talents, their engineers, AI researchers to stay in China? Seems like they are not able to do this, especially with these kind of acquisitions, right? So
It's a good question. I mean, like I was like, so I think like what you're getting at is you've got this interesting, like let's call it a rivalry between China and the United States. And so there's this rivalry. There's like certain aspects of the US government that don't want to enable Chinese for whatever reason and are restricting technology exports, right? And China has a similar attitude. It's like there's this rivalry. There's certain things that they're doing in China that they don't want the US to get access to. But then there's also just like market forces and entities and companies and people that are just doing business between China and the United States. And in some ways are like forcing the entanglement that like certain elements are trying to untangle, right? So you've almost got this process of like tangling and untangling all at the same time happening, right?
correct.
Like
Yeah,
with Nvidia is a good example. It's like they're allowed to export, they can't export, they can export some
that's right.
things, and then they change their
Correct.
mind and like back and forth. Or TikTok's another good one, right? Like the U.S. can't make up its mind about exactly how it's working, and it's not clear like what the Chinese control is over the company, right? There's a lot of opaqueness.
There's
So
a lot of
it's
opaqueness. Correct. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're in like a really interesting situation with it. I mean, I tend to think that the status quo just prevails. That people try to put guardrails around certain things and control certain elements, but more or less things will continue as they are. There was a point where American companies wanted to operate a lot more in China. And in China made it really
That's right.
clear
Yeah.
that like they did what I would claim was like confiscation of property. Like there was a
That's
lot of
right.
entities that the Chinese government just said, nope, these are ours. And they kind of stole the properties from American companies, entrepreneurs, whoever, right? I think like this was a while ago. Rupert Murdoch was the first one to call this. He's like, you don't own your property in China. They took away like certain
That's right. Yeah.
aspects of his like network and stuff. So the Chinese have been like confiscating different aspects of companies and IP and property for a while. And I think that that's where like this is obviously from the American perspective. And that's where I think American businesses were reluctant to like make those investments in China because the rules just kept changing. So Google had a Google China at one point, and they switched it all to Hong Kong.
Facebook as well.
And
Yeah.
and so China has like gone through this process of like nationalizing a lot of different businesses and assets at the expense of like American companies. And so Americans are reluctant to get too involved. But on the same token, like Americans want the business. And so they're trying to figure out like how do they operate within China that makes sense for them to continue to operate, minimize any of the risk or losses that they might face by dealing with them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you're correct on all of the fronts. What I'm kind of interested to see now is American companies are now absorbing Chinese talent, right? Instead of kind of penetrating the Chinese market, they're circumventing it, they're absorbing Chinese talent through geopolitics, geographies like Singapore. I actually think that's really interesting because what this kind of tells me is that big companies like Meta is hedging their bets a little bit. They are, yes, they have their developing their own model, but they're also kind of hedging their bets with overseas Chinese talent and all of the engineering work that the Chinese has done.
Well, yeah, here's the tweet that you put in the doc from Chima, right? With like the Chinese saying that, I mean, basically they said like reunification with Taiwan is inevitable.
That's what the Chinese says, correct. So the geopolitics here is chips are getting more expensive, right? You kind of already mentioned this about NVIDIA. The GPU costs are set to double in the next 12 to 18 months. So all the big US companies like Meta, who doesn't have the same capability as Google and Amazon, are looking to hedge their bets. So seems like this might be the obvious way to do this, right? And it's cool that while we're getting this split, we're also seeing merging some areas like Meta acquiring.
I think the Chinese will just talk big. I don't think they'll do anything with Taiwan. It's funny because like I saw this, and then I was like on YouTube today, and I saw the Taiwanese response. So I mean, the Taiwanese government is defiant. Like I was like, these guys have got balls, dude. Like they're like quoting Sun Tzu in The Art of War, and they're like prepared for anything. And I'm like, wow, dude, that's like that's like a statement, right? So I think a lot of it's political posturing, like how this all plays out. I don't know. People are going to continue to try to diversify the computer chip supply chain, right? Like they're building foundries in the United States, and China's trying to build foundries in mainland China. Those things take a long time, and they're very hard to like set up, and so it's not clear like that it's not clear. I don't even know if it's going to work. So like Taiwan is unique in their ability to create a lot of these semiconductors. And like, will that business actually be able to be duplicated somewhere else? Like, there's a part of me that thinks like, no, like it's theater. Like they're trying to do it, but it's so hard that it just might not actually. Like, are any of these foundries? Yeah, are any of these foundries in the United States operational? No, right? Not a single like semiconductors come out of any of them, and it's been a while, like 5-10 years.
Right. Yeah. So I know that Chinese are trying to create our own architecture to fully decouple away from America as well. Like, so by far all of the chip designs are American made or American design. Right. So we only just manufacture it in places like Taiwan. So if the Chinese really, really wants to decouple, they have to have their own architecture as well. Right. So basically, it's exactly the same thing, which is we're not 100% sure that's achievable. So maybe like the answer is we create these kind of neutral zones. So Taiwan is this like neutral zone where yes, there's tariffs. NVIDIA sells to both Chinese and the US. Singapore is obviously a neutral zone where you can Chinese companies move there and also allow these entities to be acquired by US companies as well. So
I think I
that's
think
very cool. You know?
I think if I was a nation like Taiwan and somehow I was so lucky and hardworking that I was able to
Right,
corner the market on semiconductor manufacturing, like, dude, that
right,
is like a really, I think that's
right.
actually an excellent, and that is art of war. Like, they are in, I think, a very powerful position to protect their sovereignty and security because, like, it's the only place in the world to get these things. And both the
They
United
should be
States and
invested.
China are, well,
Right.
both China, U.S. and China are going to talk big, but I think the likelihood that they get invaded is actually quite low because, like,
Very low.
the
Correct.
disruption would just be like on like China and America can't have that get disrupted, right? Where
It can be
like if you
disrupted. Correct. Yeah.
cannot,
Yeah.
it cannot. So like that is their security. Like that Taiwan has that. I think gives them an incredible amount of like leeway and power, you know, and is the reason that their sovereignty to some degree, whatever they have today. I don't know how you want to define it, but like I think it guarantees their security. Uh, I think like a nation like Ukraine, the food situation is important, but it's not critical and it's not the only
The food
place.
and
So
right.
like you could make a calculated bet to invade that country, which I think went really poorly for Russia, but like they did it. I don't think that's likely that happens in Taiwan because of like the critical infrastructure. And I think that on the part of Taiwan, it's quite smart. And I don't know
It's
if
very
now
smart.
we've made enemies with everyone in the CCP on the internet, but like here we are.
Nice. Which is I think it's important. Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Closer to home, billionaires are leaving places like
Okay, my
California
favorite. Yeah, let's talk about this.
because of a couple of things, right? Billionaire tax was one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
What?
Like keep going. I got something to share, but you keep talking.
Yeah. So billionaire tax was the obvious one. And just the unfavorable ecosystem that the politicians are creating for the tech billionaires. So
All
they're
right,
going to places like Austin.
let's look at this here. See if I could zoom. Will this zoom in on for? Oh yeah, great. That's good. So I think this post that Peter Walker just put up today, I think summarizes the entire thing quite well. He's got David
Right.
Sachs's tweet
Yeah. Right.
here.
Really
Like,
viral tweet.
yeah, yeah. You just said like the billionaire tax, right? So the summary is that uh we should share. So we should explain the background of the billionaire tax that Sachs is talking about. So because I looked pretty deeply into this, I don't know how much you've researched it, but like it's a it's a it's a quirk of the California Constitution. So the state of California has a direct democracy element to it that I believe no other state in the United States has. And so what this means is
Interesting.
that enough voters, enough citizens of the state get enough signatures, you can get any law put on the ballot that
The
the
ballot.
voters just vote on. This doesn't exist anywhere else. Like I can't, you and I just can't go and get a law created in the state of Washington, state of New York, or state of Vermont, and then it just gets voted on by the people. So California is this like wacky direct democracy that it sounds great, and particularly someone like I'm a big believer in like individual liberty and freedom and even democracy. But I would say that this particular iteration has been the source of an incredible amount of dysfunction in California. So no politician is well, that's probably not true. it wasn't backed by a political group of people. It didn't go through the legislature. It's totally gone through this like third party situation, right? The people that authored this crazy billionaire tax are the California Government Workers Union, just the government workers, right? And what they wrote was what I would characterize as a crazy law that's going to be a one time 5% tax on total assets of anybody who with $1 billion or more, right?
Right.
And so there's so much to talk about just with this crazy law. In my opinion, this law is crazy. Like, like it's taxing like how it taxes Sergey's stock holdings in Google. Like he would be forced to sell a bunch of Google shares to pay the tax. Like it would tax David Sacks's home. It would tax like just any asset that you own. Like Peter Thiel famously has $1 billion in his 401k, which is like a tax shelter and is not normally subject to tax. This law would tax that. It would like it does a lot of things that like I think all of those things are bad. I think like taxing unrealized gains on assets is bad. I think additional taxes on top of people's property where they already pay taxes like is crazy. I think taxing tax shelters like 401k, that's one of the promises of that vehicle is that like it's a tax-free thing. And like what you don't like that Peter Thiel has a lot of money in there, that's one thing. But like reality is like that's how the law works. So we should respect that law for every bit as a 401k. And the idea of like a special law that can tax that, I think is frightening. It's one of the reasons that like since I was young, I've always been a relatively weak advocate for 401k because I think that laws like this will come. I think that like they're not really, the tax shelters are not real and they're not strong, which is a different conversation.
Yeah, I think somebody really called it for what it was. It's a confiscation. So,
That's what I think.
right, it's really not a tax. It's a one-off confiscation of people's property, upwards to 5% of billions and billions of dollars. That's crazy.
Right, poorly implemented. And then so this I know it's a long explanation, but like so the government workers unions are the ones who like need to ensure that their pensions are paid out by the state. So they're the ones that have all of the incentive to do something crazy like this because all they care about is their pensions. Right?
Right.
And so this confiscatory tax that hits on all of these like taboos that it shouldn't be hit on just demonstrates like I think the dysfunction of California and like the length that certain groups are going to go to try to like get paid on promises that the government can't ultimately keep. So we know that like there's all these liabilities out there regarding like health insurance and pensions and monies owed to like government workers in particular that like we can't pay for. We don't have the money to pay for them. And so they're going to create like a really difficult dynamic where there's going to be some big fights over fundraising or funding like this. And there's something people have talked about since I was a kid, right? And so now we're like the chickens have finally come home to roost. We're finally in a situation where like the fights are real. Like we're trying to find out how to fund these things that we know we can't pay for.
From the pensions,
Yeah. And so to be super clear, like this law has not passed, right? It's just that like the threat of this law might pass is what's created all of this like noise, which I think is even really interesting. Like the law is not, in fact, it might not pass. It's gotten so much attention recently. Like I don't know if it'll pass, but the problem is like it's demonstrated that governments like California might do things like this that are just so crazy that like why would you stick around and wait for it to happen? And that was why brings us to like this tweet from David Sacks saying like, hey, as a response to socialism, Miami will replace New York City as the finance capital and Austin will replace SF as the tech capital. And he said this after he announced that his venture capital firm, Craft Ventures, was opening an office in Austin because he would need to open an office there the last day of last year in order to qualify that his business or his venture firm is now domiciled in the state of Texas in order to avoid having to be subject to this crazy tax. That might not happen. That might not even happen, right? And so a lot of people got up in arms and got crazy about like David Sacks saying like, hey, the center of gravity might shift from Silicon Valley to Austin.
Places like Austin.
Yeah, and so Peter created this great graphic about like, hey, you know, like is it true? Like, is Silicon Valley dying? And I had some debate with him on here too, you know, talking about this, saying that like there's always this narrative every 10 years that like Silicon Valley is dying and it's going to go somewhere else. And so he did a great job, I think, at like showing that Austin is quite small when it comes to the amount of venture capital. So he says right there, it's a 9x gap in the money invested. I would note that like,
dollar invested.
Yeah, the amount of money invested though is larger than Seattle, and Seattle is considered a pretty serious tech hub. You have both Amazon and Microsoft here, but there's more money going to startups in Austin today. So I think there's some interesting things that you can like learn from this chart. Ultimately, like I guess you can see my take here. Like so, I wrote that like, hey, Y Combinator started in Boston 2005. I remember when that was a big tech hub, and 20 years, a lot of things can change. And so he wrote me back, and we kind of talked about, you know,
Boston is still a big tech, right? So do you think that like VC money is a good indication?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I mean, I wrote that like, hey, Sacks is hyperbolic. Sacks did say it'll replace SF. I think that's like hyperbole. It's a kind of a crazy statement. I don't think it's mathematically accurate based particularly on like Peter's data here. Quantitatively, it's not going to Austin will not replace San Francisco in a year or two. Could it replace it 10 years or 20 years? I actually think yes. And that's what I wrote was like, hey, it's got more Fortune 500 headquarters in any other state today. Texas today is number one Fortune 500 headquarters. That is recent. So like in 20 years, I think it's possible. There's a lot of things that could happen and it could not happen. But I do think that the idea that Silicon Valley is a home of high tech being permanent is not the case at all. And that it wasn't even the case 25 years ago that like there were a few firms from Silicon Valley. And then, you know, you and I talked about this, like you had the dot-com boom. So the 90s and like PayPal in particular, right? And everyone's familiar with PayPal Mafia. David Sacks is PayPal Mafia. Elon Musk is PayPal Mafia. Basically, everybody that you have heard of who's big in like Silicon Valley high tech basically was involved or worked at PayPal. It's right. Incredible, actually.
Right.
Dave McClure from 500 Startups even was at PayPal, right? So you had that phenomenon, which is like .com and the PayPal IPO in particular, which just minted a bunch of wealthy people who are very excited about investing in startups. And then you had the iPhone. And that was be my generation, right? 2008, 2009, iPhone emerged and you had the iPhone ecosystem and a lot of investment went into like iPhone apps and companies like Uber emerged from that. Uber is probably the greatest example of like an iPhone native mobile application. It utilized GPS before anybody else was doing with it, and incredible company, right? So I think that like in order for Austin to really become a tech center of like significant clout to perhaps rival Silicon Valley would require an event like that. It would require like an iPhone type of ecosystem. It will require like a PayPal type event. And so
I see.
There is one on the horizon.
Yes.
The SpaceX IPO. So Elon's moved, you know, SpaceX to Austin. I guess technically Twitter and XAI is still in California, is what I read. But the SpaceX IPO, which a lot of people say will happen next year, could be the type of catalyst that brings a ton of venture capital to Austin. You'll have like one of the biggest, it may be the biggest tech IPO ever. I mean, we're not talking like a small IPO, right? It's like the size of, that's what people misunderstand too.
It's going to be like $500 billion, 500.
The PayPal one was big at the time, really,
Right.
really big, right? Like, and they had that much money from it. So same idea here. Like, it's not a small one. Like, this is going to be the biggest ever. And like, what will that do for Austin? Will that create a bunch of like new money that wants to go in and fund all kinds of interesting startups and is fairly Austin centric? Like, I think it's possible.
I think so. I think it's very possible, especially if Austin stays hardware focused. I think Texas could become the Shenzhen of US. It absolutely could. There is lots of smart people working at SpaceX. Once the liquidity happens in a year or two, they could invest into other hardware companies. I know Andrew is also has presence in Austin or in Texas. It just makes sense. Right? I don't think Austin will replace all of San Francisco or the Valley. The Valley could stay more software driven. AI is not going to change. AI is not going to move to Austin. But it could create an interesting dichotomy where AI or software happens in the Valley and hardware happens in Austin.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there are. So I'll be more contrarian here. Like, I think there's plenty of scenarios where like Silicon Valley becomes very painful for people to operate in, and they do move to Texas. And so I don't think it's a given that software stays in Silicon Valley.
I see.
You know, yeah, I don't think it's a given. I think there's a lot of people making this assumption, and you know, I don't think it's like, that's why I bring up the Boston example, right? That Y Combinator was actually started in Boston, and you and I were talking about how there used to be all these tech companies in Boston, and then it became very unfriendly to tech because of non-competes. So that was what really broke Boston. So Boston started enforcing them. So people would start a company and they would have some success, and then one founder's like, I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I want to have a new company, do something cool. And they would sue that guy and be like, you can't compete with us. You know, you signed a non-compete. And like, well, I'm going to Silicon Valley. And that's what happened. And the non-competes, I believe there's even like a couple of test cases because they tried to enforce them in California. And that's why California is known to be like totally unenforceable, any non-compete, no matter where you've signed it on Elon's colony on Mars. California will protect you, which is something I always thought was fantastic. One of the things I loved about California when I first moved there, right, was that they were really, I know it's an interesting quirk for a company that, for a state that's become so synonymous with socialism, that they were actually an advocate for like a really core aspect of free market capitalism, that they didn't enforce non-competes. I think it's fantastic. And I think that was really, really important in like why Silicon Valley was a success.
Do you think that there is a similar thing that Austin can offer? So, like, obviously the tax is better.
Great question.
Do you think that's enough?
Great question. So this starts to get, so I think everything I've said so far, I think is pretty factual, pretty based in reality. I've been pretty grounded. So there are a bunch of other things happening. Let's call them like moonshots. They're they're moonshots. They're not guaranteed to work, but there are all kinds of things happening in the state of Texas that could be game changers if they happen. So there's like a Texas stock exchange that I don't know if it's launched or it's been established, but the idea is that a lot of the what is a term for it? A lot of the governance regarding like ESG, the ESG governance in American stock exchanges, like requiring companies, like all kinds of requirements, right, about reporting and like climate reporting and like how many women you have on your board and all those things. They're actually New York state laws. So New York state has a lot of clout when it comes to governance on stock markets because the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ, they're all located
In New
in
York.
the state of New York. And so that's where a lot of those regulations came from. And there are a group of people who were not happy about that, including me. Like I don't think a lot of those things are great for businesses, in spite of being a vegetarian and someone I want to point out that doesn't own a car and rides a bike everywhere. Like it's not like I am some kind of crazy like climate denier, but I'm very into free markets and I'm really into like individual freedom. And I'm not into like lots of government intervention. And so I'm supportive of the idea that there'd be a stock market somewhere else that would let companies list and wouldn't force them to abide by a lot of
Right.
these regulations. And which I thought was fine. If companies want to like do those things and they do them, I think that is great. I'm very against forcing people to do things. And it's kind of like my biggest disagreement with a lot of like lefty people I know is that like I support a lot of these ideas. I just do not support forcing people to do things.
There's no room. Okay, that's interesting. So there could be a new stock exchange that's a departure from the New York Stock Exchange. How does that? Do you think they'll offer founders incentive to list there as well?
Yeah,
Like,
right. It's very new. So okay. So this is where it starts to get a little theoretical, right? It's like if I was
like
launching a
this
new, yeah.
new
This
startup.
this is the fun part, right? The conversation. If I was starting a new stock market, like how would I get people to list on it? Well, I'd make my listing requirements simpler. I'd make them easier. I'd make them like lower barrier to entry. I'd allow smaller companies to list, right? Like go down the list of all the things you
That's
do.
interesting.
Oh, so like if I move to Texas and I've got this like cool SaaS company and we're doing like $100 million in revenue, it's like, let's go list on the Texas Stock Exchange and do
Right.
an
Instead
IPO.
of
And like
paying millions and
the
millions
cost,
to
yeah, the cost to do this will be way lower. It'll be cool. We'll get like the like Lone Star State logo somewhere, right? Like I could see it be like really attractive to startups to want to list on that. And they don't have to actually be in Texas, as far as I understand, right? They could be in California still as well. But I just see this like shift in the center of gravity away from California, right? And that there's people working on things like that. I also think that like costs are lower, so you could get employees. It's easier for them to like. There's some other basic arguments, right? Silicon Valley are expensive, like it's hard to like hire and manage big staff there unless you're like a total rock star, right? Unless you're like OpenAI raising $40 billion
$40 billion. Yeah.
like so, and maybe the best of the best will decide that California is where they need to be for whatever reason, right? But it'll attract a lot of other companies, I think, to places like Texas because it'll be like much more low cost in terms of like operating, which I think is great for entrepreneurship. So we'll see. Like, you know, Gary Tan was pretty clear on Twitter recently saying that like, hey David, like I don't know about all of that. Like Y Combinator is going to stay here.
He's very focused on making
Which
it
is fine.
work.
Like, and I see like Y Combinator's model, right? Like they're really early. And I mean, I continue to focus in the Bay Area too with my business, or like all the Vibe Your SaaS events are in San Francisco. I still love
For sure.
California. I still love San
Sure.
Francisco. I go there once a month. I think it's a fantastic place. And so I can see like when you're at the early stage, and you're trying to grow these companies, like having a larger venture ecosystem around them to absorb these companies is really important, right? So Y Combinator is probably not the first pioneer to enter a market like Austin. You probably need like larger, more established companies to move there, which is what's happening. So if larger, more established companies move there, smaller companies move there to service them, and then even smaller companies move there to hope to get acquired by them, right? I think that that's the model that
Yes.
that
Yeah.
to for a market like that to grow into something much larger than it is today. I think the Peter Walker numbers are quite interesting from Carta too. That the numbers are really small. Like
In
it is
terms
not
of
big.
dollar invested.
Yeah, it's not big in terms of dollars invested in venture capital in Austin. But you could make a couple of other arguments like dollars invested in startups have gone way down in the last 5 years.
True.
And
Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
And actually, these parts of I didn't want to argue. I like Peter, and I didn't feel like making a big argument on LinkedIn. But there's another side to all this. There's like venture capital dollars are the lowest they've been in 5 years. Venture capital
Correct. Itself as a model.
deals are low 5 years.
Right.
And the vast majority is going to 10 AI startups. So you could
Yeah,
say that like venture dollars just outside of like OpenAI, Anthropic, a few other people, Cursor, like there's just not that much money. So all the numbers look small. Austin, Seattle, New York, whatever. And that if the fundraising environment change, like the SpaceX, like some of these IPOs happen,
OpenAI, they'll unlock.
It could unlock it, and it could shift it to a market like Austin. I'm not bullish on a market like Miami for high tech. I do think that Florida. I'm from New York. I was just in New York. I love New York. New York is in trouble. Like those finance guys, they can't wait to get out of Manhattan. Like I don't think New York will survive as a financial. That's the funny part with David's tweet is like, I think there's more evidence that Silicon Valley is quite healthy and quite strong. And the shift to Austin, I mean, I can paint a picture where I think it'll happen. And I even consider moving there. Like, I really believe in it. I think it's really cool. And I think a lot of what I said could happen. But I think it is inevitable that most finance leave New York and they move to Florida. Like, inevitable. That is coming. I with Mandami now in charge in New York.
Yeah.
And let's see what they do. But like those guys,
that's gonna happen on a shorter horizon than Silicon Valley founders moving to.
They can't wait to get. They are like Goldman Sachs.
They're ready.
Huge. Oh man, yeah, they're
ready.
I don't think that they. I think it's like what is it? JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon are still going to, there'll be a few people that remain, or he's at least painting this picture and posturing that he'll stay.
Stay in New York. Citadel has already moved to Miami. Or
Citadel from
Florida.
From Chicago is like it's just the Chicago board. Is the Chicago Board of Exchange still there? Like it's just over for like Chicago as a financial hub. And then all the other stuff over in the next 10 years, it is inevitable they will move to Florida. I'm not moving. I don't like the weather in Florida. I'm not a Florida person.
Too much alligators. Is there alligators?
Too many. Like it's the humidity. Like I went there. Have you been there? Like I went there like November and it was like hot. I'm like I can't. It's just Florida. It's just not. I don't know. I just don't. I much more see myself in Texas.
In Austin? The dry heat.
Yeah. I think it's a done deal that will eventually move. I can't move back to California. It's really cold here in Seattle, and I think Texas. Lance Armstrong's from here. I could ride a bike and do some racing. In Austin, I'm gonna get a cowboy hat. I think it'll look really good. In a cowboy, yeah. My wife, she's like, "You would look good as a cowboy." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll look fucking awesome as a cowboy. I'm gonna do some cowboy stuff."
Sounds cool to me. You have to maybe pick up the barbecue hat.
Eating meat. Yeah, you know, I do like Texas barbecue. Like I do, you know, I'm not like a super strict vegetarian. I do eat meat here and there. Like if that's all that, like I went for for Christmas dinner. It was like all they had. It was like beef, tallow, potatoes, beef, and then Yorkshire pudding, which is like beef dripping pudding. Like it was like 3 beef. I was like, okay, I guess I'll eat some of this. Oh my God.
So for Austin, I think they need to figure out what they can offer to founders and companies, right?
Are you going to move to Austin with me?
Oh, we did think about it a couple of years back. It's a little bit more complicated for us because we're Canadian, but
my wife's Canadian. I can marry you too, Paul.
we'll make it work somehow.
They'll figure
We'll
it
make it
out.
work
You'll
somehow.
figure it out. Yeah, I think you know, I mean, like, look, dude, who knows what happens, right? Like, the state of Texas might. I don't know. I think there's a lot that can happen. I think it's a really interesting debate. And the last
It's
piece,
cool.
last thing I'll share is like, this billionaire tax that just happened. I think that what people perhaps are missing is this isn't like a one-time thing. Like, I
That's
think
right.
that
That's right.
the fiscal situation in California is so dire that they will just continue to do things like this, and that's what will drive out a lot of the startups. There might be people who stay who can afford it. I guess Google could just pay it, and maybe they decide like, we'll just stay here and it's worth it. We'll just keep paying all this money to save California. Like, okay, that's their decision. I wouldn't make that decision if I ran Google. I bet there's a point where it's just like, this just doesn't make any sense. And the other really bizarre thing, so Balaji pointed this out. All these cities, so Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, like Chicago, the only business that is like propping them up is like these tech companies, and the city governments are doing everything they can to drive them away. It's very strange, I think, but I think that like the pressure, like that's why it's important to understand that government workers are the ones who wrote that law, because those people like they don't really have a lot of options, right? Like if you're relying on the government to pay your pension, you need to find a way to get that money. You don't want to
To fund it.
forfeit that. You've
Correct.
made your bet, right? So that's why, like for me, I think for me, I try to be really fair and try to like explain as much as I can about both sides of this. Like, and I think it's a very difficult situation that like cities and states are in, and they'll find themselves in over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. Well, I think 10 years horizon there will be. It's happening. Starting.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, I don't see any way out of it, right? Like the numbers are so insane. Like the amount of money they owe and the amount of money they collect,
They're still spending
it just
every
doesn't
single
add up.
budget
And so
fiscal year.
I don't know yeah, I don't know how it works. All right, let's talk about one more thing. I want to talk about the event.
It's happening in March
Yeah, March
11th.
11th. Yeah.
Vibe Your SaaS.
Yeah,
Founder
so we
Mixer
did.
#2.
Yeah, you came to the one at TechCrunch in 2025. So we'll be doing another one. This one is going to be at the AWS Builders Loft, which I'm super excited about. And we've already had a bunch of people apply. And so early applications are open if you want to apply to this. We're going to make it a pitch contest this time. So not only will there be demos, not only will there be like speakers, not only is like a mixer, you can meet people, but we'll have 5 startups get up, pitch, and then we'll give an award to our number one pick of the evening.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Like we got a bunch of interesting people lined up. We've got sponsors. Yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I'd love to do some kind of meetup in Austin. So if anyone out there is interested and wants to work with me on that, I'd love some ideas, support, like where do people typically do these things? It'd be fun to kind of test the waters and give myself a free trip to Austin.
To join you. This is March 11th.
Yeah, March 11th, in San Francisco at the Amazon Web Services Builder Loft. So they have a space that they provide to people in the community, work with startups for events. They have an incredible space. It's gonna be great.
It's awesome. So apply now.
Yeah, applications are
Get a
open
spot.
if you're interested in attending or interested in presenting. Like apply. We also, of course, accept applications from investors who want to hang out, meet people if they play in the early stage, angel investors, small firms, small VC firms. We had about 100 investors sign up for the last one. Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, Bay Area still is the home of venture capital. That's for sure.
It's true. It's true. It's where VCs want to hang out with founders. No other city is quite like that. I think we're good.
Are we good?
We're good.
All right.